It might take more than a little fairy dust for Disney to wish away the bruises from its latest round against Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. As Governor DeSantis continues his efforts to unravel the sweetheart land deal that Disney has enjoyed for more than 50 years in the Sunshine State. In fact, I mentioned this yesterday. I did meet with Governor DeSantis, talked with a number of his policy issues. I think he's been right on. And I will tell you, I'm very encouraged by him going toe-to-toe with Disney and woke corporate America. Well, it doesn't appear that Mickey and company got the message, because they announced last night that Disneyland, and of course this one in California, will host a special Pride event in June, officially called, and I'm not making this up, Disney After Dark Pride Night. But this comes as Disney stock continues to crater, and they're about to fire 4,000 employees and slash spending by over $5 million. What's wrong with corporate America? Join me now to discuss this and much more. Ken Blackwell, Senior Fellow for Human Rights and Constitutional Governance here at the Family Research Council, former mayor of the great city of Cincinnati, Ohio, and Secretary of State for the Buckeye State. Ken Blackwell, welcome back to the program.
Hey, Tony. Always good to be with you.
Good to see you from the Queen City.
Absolutely.
So Ron DeSantis is, he's taken on Disney, and even, President Trump, former President Trump, making comments, he shouldn't have picked that fight. Ron DeSantis is picking this fight. He didn't pick the fight. He passed a bill about parental rights in education. Disney stuck its nose in, started mousing around with it. He pushed back, and he's not let go. That's something we've not seen very much in Republican politics.
No, and as I always say, Tony, the great abolitionist Frederick Douglass was fond of saying, those who are whooped easiest are whooped most often.
And that's why Republicans are always getting whooped.
And so this pushback by the governor is very important, because as devastating as the activity of big government, big business is also mobilizing into being a force that will try to change the culture.
Right.
And that's something that we have to resist.
Let's talk about that, because you were the mayor of Cincinnati. I was born outside of Cincinnati. First 12 years of my life, I was there in Cincinnati. A lot of my family worked at Procter & Gamble. You had a lot of the big corporations there. This is relatively new. They were not pushing this anti-family woke agenda 25, 30 years ago.
Absolutely not. And what's so fascinating about this is that they are now being responsive to those who are the loudest, not those who are the greatest in number, but those who are the loudest. And
right.
and that's disquieting and disconcerting.
But it doesn't even make economic sense. I mean, as I was just talking about, Disney's lost money since they got into this fight. And then, I'm not going to ask you what brand beer you drink, but I'm just joking. The Bud Light losing over $6 billion in market capitalization by putting Dylan Mulvaney, a transgender, a man masquerading as a woman, on the beer can.
Well, absolutely. And I think what's happened with Anheuser-Busch, what's happening with Disney, is that they decided, if we back down to logic and what is right, then we're going to lose those on the left. So both Anheuser-Busch and Disney are doubling down.
But why wade into it? Why not if you make beer, make beer. If you entertain families, entertain families.
Oh, absolutely. And that's, again, what is disquieting about this activism by big corporations who are actually trying to change our society and
but then they start complaining when stockholders, shareholders start pushing back. It's very similar to what I was just talking about with President Biden in the White House. And I'm going to read this again because it is indicative of the left. So he says he's going to veto the women's sports protection bill after he pushed and changed Title IX and pushed this transgender agenda on schools. They said instead of addressing the pressing issues that families and students face today, such as rising teacher pay, keeping guns out of schools, addressing the mental health crisis that our youth face, Republicans have instead chosen to prioritize policies that discriminate against children. They're simply standing against what this administration is doing. Corporate America getting upset. You actually sent me an article earlier today. Corporate America getting upset because parents, concerned citizens, showing up at their shareholder meetings.
The shareholder activism is going to be something that they're going to be faced with for a long time. They have awakened a sleeping giant. And so, we used to talk about the moral majority. We talked about being quiet and unassuming. Well, they've kicked sand in our face for too long, and we're starting to speak out. But what's happening now, as we see pushback against big government tyranny, there is a real resistance and pushback against big business tyranny. And I'm cheering it on.
When I was in, and I'm sure it was the same for you, when you were in elected office. I've been out almost 20 years. I've been out of public office, but I was one of the highest rated legislators when it came to business because what they wanted was a favorable business environment so they could do business, not meddle in the policies that affect our children and our families. They just wanted to do business, but that's changed.
Yeah, and for so long, too many of us have been on the sidelines, and we've watched the big business, whether it's represented in the Biden administration, and now this big business activism to try to change and force cultural change on the populace. Well, what we know and what you've always said here at the Family Research Council is that history is not changed and advanced by, this blind chance. It is advanced by men and women of dedication and purpose, and we're using the God-given agency to change the course of history and to push back against this tyranny.
Our republic was not made for spectators.
No.
Only for participants, and we've got to be involved. And now I'm going to ask you about this shareholder activism, how that works, but there's other ways. For instance, I try to avoid shopping with those who use the profits that I give them against me. I try to avoid the Walmarts. I shop at a local grocery store that is owned by a family in my community, and I shop there. I pay a little bit more, but I'm investing in the community, and so I try to avoid. And I always talk about this in the program. I try to avoid anything that was made in China, which is almost all of Walmart's products. So I think we've got to be responsible consumers because that sends a message. I mean, I'm like I said, I don't drink. I wish I drank beer at this point because I would boycott beer, but I don't drink. So I'm encouraged to see the fact that people are saying, I don't want Bud Light, get it out of here. That's how we send messages.
Absolutely. And the creativity in small businesses and enterprise and entrepreneurs, they created an alternative. There's an alternative to Bud Light. So you don't have to spend your time campaigning against Bud Light. Don't buy it.
Right, exactly.
There are alternatives in the market. And so you're actually using the market to, in fact, send a message to Bud Light and the House of Bush.
We got a few minutes left. Talk a little bit about this corporate the shareholder activism, how that works.
Well, there's folks who are now going to shareholder meetings. A lot of us have.
So if you
shares,
own stock.
That's right. If you own stock. And the reality is that a lot of pension funds, for businesses and state and city governments, they in fact invest in the marketplace, and your retirement is in fact made up of these stocks, and so you have shares, and you can go into these meetings and you can speak up. But much too often, it's only been the radicals on the left that have in fact been at these shareholders meetings and spoken to the leaders of these businesses and these corporations. They're now starting to hear that we have great numbers and we, in fact, have great voices, and we're starting to speak back to them because they've worked overtime to make sure that folks who represent us are not represented on their corporate boards.
Yeah.
You know?
So, Ken, do you think that corporate America is going to get the message? Will they do a course correction?
I think they will, and that's because we're not going to go away. This is not a flash in the pan. This is starting. If you start to look at the corporations, I mean, that have been targeted by this new coalition of forces that are giving voice to decency and to traditional values, if they want to stay in business, if they want to prosper, if they don't want to see their stocks take a nosedive, they'll start to listen.
Yeah, if I were in business, given the divided nature of our country and our culture, I mean, look, there's no denying we're ideologically divided as a country, more so than probably almost any time in our nation's history. If you're going to do business and provide the product to do business. Stay out of the issues. And that's what we're not looking for business to weigh in with our conservative values. We're just looking for them to stay out.
And you know, I hope the NBA and the NFL and these folks get
Play
the message
games.
also.
I mean, just
right.
play sports. Quit taking political stands, kneeling when the anthem is played. And I think that everything has become political. But then, again, I go back to what the left says. When we push back on what they have done in changing the culture, we're the ones accused of being the aggressors. So call us the aggressor, call us whatever you want to call us, but we're, as you said, we're not going away. We're going to continue to stand for those traditional values that made America an exceptional nation. And that means, number one, we are a people of faith, and we're going to practice our faith, and we're going to do it publicly, and we're not going to apologize for it.
And we're going to protect our freedoms, because we know that, our freedom is not a grant from government. It's a gift from God, and we're going to defend it.
And that comes from a longtime NRA member.
Absolutely.
Ken Blackwell, always great to see you.
Always good to be with you, Tony.
Thanks so much for coming in.
God bless you.